can't miss that. Hi, everyone. We have a very special guy tonight here, Rabbi David Delman. I was so lucky to meet him years ago by Rabbi Ben-Zion Klatsko, and then he came to speak in my school, and his story of before the Poland story, the first one, was so incredible. I wanted the world to get a little understanding of where you're coming from, Rabbi David Delman, and then be able to hear from your awesome story and inspire us. And then any people in America that get to meet you in person, that would be the bomb best,
Yeah.
So
and obviously for those that are in New York, definitely, obviously we can't have guests now because of COVID, but we try to be a mini Jerusalem. We can't be in Jerusalem right now, unfortunately, because of COVID, but we want to encourage people. If you're in New York or in our area, we'd love to spend Shabbat with you. Before COVID, we were having between 50 and 100 guests every single Shabbos here in Queens. And then unfortunately that was stopped because of COVID, but we miss everybody so much, and we look forward to having everybody again soon.
Yay! So if you could start with us, like how you were brought up and how you became the man.
Okay, sure. So first of all, I want to thank Chai Sarah. You never think that like the small meetings you have with people will ever amount to anything. I think I met Chaya one time at the Klatskos. I've been involved in Jewish outreach now nearly 20 years, and it was like a passing wind, as they say, two souls in the night, and we never know, right? Like why God makes it that people pass at the right time in the same room or at the same weekend or on the same day with each other, and who knows, right? So obviously now it's brought us together to do an amazing Zoom call.
Crazy.
10 years later, 5 years later, I don't know when was the last time we saw each other. So everything was very, very meant to be. And I really want to thank Chaya Sarah for fostering that friendship and remembering me and calling upon me. And I'm really, really happy to inspire wherever I can possibly inspire. As I mentioned to Tanya before, I'm a director of RAGE Manhattan. RAGE stands for Russian American Jewish Education. And it's currently where I'm working, and I get to work with so many amazing Russian Jews, but really all types of Jews from every background, some religious, some completely secular, somewhere in between. I love Jews of all stripe and of all color, of all backgrounds, and also our soon-to-be Jews too as well. Right? So all you guys are awesome, and it really has been my greatest honor over the years to serve the Jewish people. Just to say welcome to the new people coming in, Perry and anybody else, also Debbie and anybody else coming in too. I guess a good place to start with my story is, I captioned this, or I titled the name of my story, "The Curse of the Cultural Jew," because that's kind of the person I was, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that. I grew up to Orthodox Jewish parents, right? Now, a lot of people will say, well, okay, a person's not religious because their parents are not religious. And that's why it makes sense that their parents are not religious or that they're not religious. For me, that was not the case. My parents were Orthodox, and I chose to leave Orthodoxy for a secular lifestyle. So this is like a very big hot topic these days with movies like Unorthodox and, which unfortunately, those movies there are aspects to it that are true, but unfortunately it draws Judaism in a very, very negative light, which is not healthy. But anyways, that's a subject to a different conversation. But I grew up to Orthodox parents, and I left Orthodoxy when I was like 15 years old. And I did it for a variety of reasons. Again, I was a kid. I was actually just giving a class just before I got on, talking about God's existence. And I told my class, I said, if I'm honest with you, I don't think that there was ever a time that I didn't believe in God. There was a time that I hated God, but you have to believe that something exists in order to hate it, right? So I hated God. I didn't debate God's existence. I debated God's justice. And that's what I think what most people struggle with, because I think there are so many great proofs to God's existence, but I think the biggest concern or problem that people have is with the pain and the struggle in the world. So perhaps we'll get a little bit of clarity of that through the story as well. So I guess my story starts out like so many Eastern European Jews in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I'm 37 years old, where my family was very, very scarred. And the truth is, if you are a Ashkenazic Jew, or frankly, I'll actually broaden that and saying a Jew of any kind, you have had trauma in your life, right? That means your family either went through Soviet Russia, or through the Holocaust, or through whatever's going, all the terrible things, unfortunately, the terrorism in Israel. We've all had it. Some have had it in the past. Some, unfortunately, are still going through it currently, right? So we are trauma-stricken people, right? Wow. And when the Jews came over after the Holocaust, like my grandparents, my grandfather survived Auschwitz. He had numbers on his arm. My grandmother was hidden by Polish neighbors for 6 years as a teenager. And when they met and came here, they may have survived physically, but mentally they were dead. Psychologically, they were dead. The idea of social workers and therapists in 1946 was unheard of, right? There were very, very few, if any. So people may have survived physically, but we don't. But the thing that people don't talk about is the after effects, right? And I bet you so many of you, I don't see a lot of your faces. You're all blacked out as far, you're not showing the faces, but I'm sure you'll nod when I tell you a lot of the things that I grew up with, because I bet you if we have a similar upbringing, you probably dealt with the same thing. Maybe your
show your face and say hi when if he says anything that matches what you like.
Oh, that's okay. Maybe your grandmother didn't let you leave the table until you finished all your food. That's a classic Polish, Eastern European. Yeah, we waste food in the Holocaust, and you can't either. Maybe we were distrusting of others, perhaps, that looked different or were different than us. That's also unfortunately from that as well. Maybe we just weren't trusting of other people. These are all effects of what happened to us from the war that were purposely or unpurposely or accidentally given over to us by our parents and grandparents. Wow. Because we are a traumatized people. And I grew up in that very much in that realm. I grew up basically without getting too much into the details, I was raised more or less by my father and my grandmother, who were just phenomenal people. But my grandmother, scarred from the war, and my mother, being the daughter of Holocaust survivors, also, I believe, was also very scarred from the war. And a lot of that unhealthy behavior goes down, right, and floods down to the next generation, even to me. So even though I'm not a child of Holocaust survivors, I'm a grandchild of Holocaust survivors, still very much is a very big part of my life and who I am today as a person. So it all started for me, I guess, when my parents were secular growing up. They met a rabbi in the 1970s. My parents were, if I looked at pictures of my dad in the 1960s and 70s, he had a big Jewish afro out to here, right, with the big, sideburns, a college-bound kid, great, whatever guy. He met my mom, who was also similar, right? They met a rabbi in the late 1970s through a great organization called Chafetz Chaim. And Chafetz Chaim Yeshiva was a great rabbi who came from the Chafetz Chaim Yeshiva, who met my parents in Silver Spring, Maryland, which is where I'm from originally, near Washington, D.C. And by the time I was born in 1983, my parents were fully Orthodox, which was pretty amazing, right? Because they grew up, right, the type of secular Jews or traditional Jews that we would be affiliated with or know of, which means my parents grew up not eating pork and going to shul on Yom Kippur. But that was about it. They were as traditional Jews could be until they met this rabbi in the late 70s, and they decided to become fully Orthodox. Now, this is all nice and wonderful, except they struggled or suffered with a disease I like to call Baltruva Syndrome. And Baltruva Syndrome means like when you've been religious for like 10 minutes, and now you think you could tell everybody around you how they're going to burn in hell because they're all doing things wrong. That's what I call it. It's an illness where we think we get to look down upon other people and tell everybody how to live their lives. So I did not take very well to this Baltruva Syndrome, of course. And I began a life of disdainment, and not only disdainment, but hatred for religious Jews, which is the irony today, because look at me now, right? That is ridiculous, right? So I had a hatred and a disdain for Orthodox Jews, particularly because, and I'm going to be very honest when I tell you this, I thought basically all religious people were posers, and they didn't really know why they were doing the things that they did. They just did them out of culture or tradition, right? So I would go to my parents and say, why do I have to go to synagogue? And they didn't have the answers because they were religious themselves only like 2 months. So they would say like, well, the rabbi's kids go to synagogue, so you're going to have to go to synagogue. Okay, well, then why do I have to eat kosher? Cheeseburgers look really good on on TV. So they said, well, the rabbi's kids keep kosher, so you have to keep kosher. At that time, there was no separate gender school in Silver Spring. So my parents sent me to TA in Baltimore, which was 45 minutes to an hour away, right? Because that's where the rabbi sent his kids. So that's where I had to go. So you can imagine, as an 8-year-old or a 10-year-old, I did not appreciate this because it was a bunch of malarkey, right? It was a bunch of people doing a practice, practicing a faith that really they had no depth of understanding of. We just did it because, like the famous what's the famous play, right? It's Fiddler on the Roof. Why? Tradition, 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 right? What a sad reason to be Jewish, to be religious, just because other people told you to do it, right? And we're going to talk about why that's so harmful soon, right? So that's what I call the curse of the cultural Jew. We were just doing it, and I grew up going to shul. I grew up keeping kosher. I grew up going to yeshiva, and I hated every single cotton picking minute because it was all forced upon me. It was all initiated, and I didn't want to get in trouble. My parents would punish me. And I said to myself, as soon as I have the opportunity to leave this hell I call Orthodox Judaism, I will leave it. And it was a very slow process, I recall. I didn't want to cause my parents too much grief, but you try to live a double life, right? So in the morning, I would walk off to yeshiva, I'd wear my kippah, but as soon as I left the door, I would take this off, and I had my rock and roll t-shirts underneath. I had my Metallica t-shirts, and this was the 90s, and I had these big ridiculous pants. They looked like a skirt, but they were called Jenkos. I remember like these. I know it looks ridiculous now, but back in the 90s, they were really cool. And I tried to live this double life until one day my parents, I guess, caught me in the act. I told my parents I was going to Baltimore to sleep over at a friend's house, when in reality I was going to Summer Sanitarium to see Metallica perform. And I saw Korn, Powerman 5000, Kid Rock, and a whole bunch of other, it was a great, great show. I got grounded for 6 months for going to that show. It was worth it. But I remember coming home after the concert, and my dad was sitting there in his PJs at like 3 a.m, right? Like this, waiting like this, wanting to know where I've been. And I said, okay, the jig is up. They're going to know who I am now. And I basically just said, listen, Dad, I am who I am. I don't like being religious. And this is just something you're going to have to accept. We got into a huge fight. There was a lot of things that were said, a lot of things that, frankly, to be honest with you, I probably regret a little bit today because I was very disrespectful, but we were kids. So unfortunately, we do sometimes say things that we regret. And I was actually kind of happy. And I'll tell you why I was happy, because I got to finally be who I wanted to be. So now my parents knew that their little yeshiva boy wasn't so yeshivish, and I got to act out and be who I wanted to be. And that was really wonderful, or as much as I thought was wonderful as wonderful could be. Now, one of the things, or one of my passions and that I had back then, and really one of the passions that I still have today, because old habits die hard, is I love, aside from hockey, which you see in my back, I love cars. I'm a car guy. I've been owning exotic cars since I was a teenager. And I've had a lot of cool cars over the day. I had a Mustang GT Shelby. I've had Corvettes. I've had lots and lots of nice cars over the years. And I started out my love for cars as a technician. So I would tell my parents I was going to go to yeshiva, but in reality, I went to Merchants Tire and Auto Centers and fixed mufflers for pay. And I love cars. I love putting cars together. Cars today are much different. They're more computer than they are cars. But back in my day, cars were much easier to put together. I could probably put together a Toyota Camry with my eyes closed, even now. But obviously, it's been a while. But it was around this time, I would say in about 10th grade, that I met a very special girl. And I immediately fell in love with her. And what was special about this girl is that while she wasn't religious either, she didn't have the same hatred for Judaism as I did, right? And I was really going out of my way. Like, I would go out of my way to eat non-kosher, go out of my way. In fact, I actually changed my name. I felt that David sounded too Jewishy, so I changed my name to Doug. Did you know that? Back in the day, I went as Doug. In fact, I still have my my scrubs from Merchants, the auto body shop that says Doug. because I didn't want people to associate with me as being Jewish. But if you look at my nose, probably that's a dead giveaway. But anyway, so I started dating this girl, and she began to show me a different version of Judaism than I ever saw before. This was a girl who she was a free spirit, and she kind of took me out of a very, very dark place. You know, I was very angry. I was a very angry person. I was angry at God for giving me a dysfunctional family. I was very angry at God for the life that I had, a very desolate life, a very unhealthy life. I don't want to get more into the details. I'm being recorded, but a very, very difficult life. And she got me out of a very, very, very dark place. Okay. And she would pick me up from the auto body shop every day at about 3:30, 4 o'clock when I was done my shift. And she would say, her name was Tova. And Tova would say to me, David, where's your kippah? And I would say, come on, Tova, you know I don't wear a kippah, right? You know, it's not something I do. And she'd say, well, you're not getting in the car unless you're putting on a kippah. So she opened up the glove box, and there was a kippah in the glove box, and said, all right, Tova, for you. I'll do it. Okay, whatever. And then she would say, are you wearing tzitzit? Tzitzit are the fringes, the little strings that men wear. And I said, come on, Tova, it's like 1,000,000 degrees outside, and I'm wearing my polyester suit to keep all the oil off me. You really think I'm going to wear tzitzit, right? Nah, of course not. So you're not getting in my car unless you put on a pair of tzitzit. And she opened up the glove box, and there was a pair of tzitzit. And I said, okay, for you. I did it. Now, in Hebrew, we call that shelo lishma bo lishma, which means even though you're doing it for the wrong reasons, we hope that eventually it will be for the right reasons, which, thank God, eventually at the end of the day it was. But I fell more in love with this girl. And one day, once we got to about senior year of high school, so she said to me, I am decided to go to Israel. I've decided to go to Israel and study in seminary. And you are free to join me. And if you don't want to join me, we're breaking up. And I was like, what? Like, what? Like, are you serious? Like, but I love you. Isn't that just, well, I'm going off. This is what I want. This is what I see in my life. I want to pursue my education. And you're welcome to pursue that with me. And if you don't want to, then you're free to leave. And I said to her, Tova, I love you. And where you go, I will go. Whoa. So I quit my job and graduated senior year, barely, and from high school. And I did this crazy thing to go to Israel and study in yeshiva. Now, to be very clear, I had no interest in studying in yeshiva. Let's just be very clear about that. I was as secular could be. I had one reason to be in Israel and one reason only, and that was to be with the woman of my dreams. That was the only reason. So whenever I got to yeshiva in the morning and the rabbis would lecture, that's all I wanted, right? I had no interest in anything, but I love my girlfriend. So I wanted to be with her, okay? My first year, she went to a yeshiva seminary, which unfortunately, I don't think it exists anymore, a place in Beit Vegan called Afike Torah. And I went to a yeshiva, which unfortunately also no longer exists, called Ner Yaakov, or Ner Jake, right? So I'll be honest when I tell you, I do not remember most of my first year. I partied very, very hard. I spent most of my time on Ben Yehuda Street, in various clubs and bars. Like I said, I really had no interest in religion at all. I loved my girlfriend, and that really was it. So just being honest, like I said, if I'm going to lie to you, I'm going to lie to you. It's not going to be good. I'll just be honest. So one night, I was on Ben Yehuda Street, and I was in a bar with three of my friends, right by Banco Paulium. I remember it was like a bar right in the center of town. And what can I say? Again, I'll be honest. They were looking for girls, right? We were all looking for girls. And I had three of my friends. They were all trying to get some numbers, trying to make some friends, whatever it was. And I see my girlfriend in my mind's eye. Just shows you, I wonder the difference of guys back then and the difference of guys now. And I said to myself, what am I even doing here? I'm going steady with Tova. Why am I trying to pick up chicks at a club? Like, why am I here? Like, I even felt that like flirting with a girl after you're already going steady with somebody else was unethical and wrong. And I said to myself, I said, you know what? I don't belong here. I really don't belong here. I have somebody that I love very much. I don't belong in this club. Again, having nothing to do with religion, right? I was loyal. So I said to my two friends that were with me, my two near Jakers, the two guys that were with me, I said, guys, I really want to leave. I really want to leave. This isn't for me. And they're like, yo, Delman, we're having such a great time. Yo, we meet these pretty girls. Like, it's awesome, right? And I'm like, no, guys, I really, really want to leave. Please, please leave with me. So finally, I got them to leave with me. We walked out of the bar, and about 35 or 40 seconds after we left the front door, there was a terrible, huge explosion. And a terrorist walked into the bar that we had just exited and detonated himself and murdered 30 people. Now, I want you guys, especially for the people that are in Israel, I'm sure you understand this probably better than anybody. This wasn't an army base. This wasn't, these are classic American teenage kids who just wanted to have a good time on a Thursday night. That's it. This was not politically motivated. We were not fighters for the resistance. We were just a bunch of stupid teenagers trying to party and have a good night. That's all it was. I will never forget that night for as long as I live. There were a lot of terrible things that happened that night, but also some very good things that I want to share with you also that I took out of that, which I only saw many years later, or only really appreciated, I should say, many years later. At that time, I was first aid and CPR certified. So I ran back down, or I tried to run back into the bar to help people. The Israeli army was there within seconds. I would say maybe even less. It felt like seconds. The time went by so fast. And just to imagine, again, for those of you who are on Ben Yehuda Street before, you know what I'm talking about. Ben Yehuda Street's like Midtown Manhattan. And there's noise, and there's music, and there's talking, and there's this, right? And then all of a sudden, there's this huge explosion, a fireball, and then there's silence, like not a sound, not a single sound. And then you hear sirens and screams and cries and pains. It's things out of a horror movie. That's why I can't really watch horror movies anymore, because it brings me back to that day. And I ran back in, and the Israeli army, once they realized that I was not injured in any way, they threw me out and they said, get out of here. You're fine. We don't want you there. And, unfortunately, we've had far too much experience dealing with these types of things. And I walked back to yeshiva. Now, I want to tell you something very beautiful that I didn't appreciate then, but now 20 years later, I can really appreciate it. Okay. And I want you to hear this because it's really coming from my heart. Okay. I know, because I've been on both sides of this, that there is a major wall in Israel, and not only in Israel, but perhaps the entire world, between religious and secular Jews. This is not just an Israeli problem. Jews just don't get along as well as they should. That's just a reality of the fact. It's not an Israeli problem. It's a Jewish problem. We need to do better, all of us, okay? And if you walk down Rehov King George, I always used to say to myself, there's almost like an invisible wall, right? On the left side are all the Haredim, because if you want to go to the Western Wall, you have to walk down King George Street, which will take you all the way down to the Old City, right? And then on the right side is Ben Yehuda Street, all the bars, all the cool stores, all the Cellcom store. I don't know Cellcom if it still exists. Back in those days it did, right? Orange, Cellcom, all the cool stores, all the music, all the hookahs, all the, all the fun stuff on the other side of the street. And there's kind of this invisible wall where the religious stay on their side and the secular stay on their side. But I want to tell you something really unbelievable that happened that night. The bomb went off, and I saw something that I will never forget. I saw the religious man with the peyot and the kippah run across the street to the girl in pants and help her because her leg was bleeding. I saw the girl who was wearing pants on the secular side run over to the Hasidic man because he had a broken leg. I saw people running from each side of the street caring for each other for the first time in my life. And I said to myself, unbelievable that it takes a bomb for the Jewish people to realize that we're family. That we would normally spit at each other, curse each other. Oh, those stupid religious people. Oh, those stupid secular people. And we would spit at each other and curse at each other. Only a bomb has to happen for us to realize that we need to love and take care of each other, that we were really family all along. It's a very, very special idea. And that's why it's unfortunate that we have anti-Semitism in this world. Because sometimes when the parents, meaning God, looks down and says, why can't the kids get along? Right? And God shakes up the world, something really bad happens. And all of a sudden we remember that we're family. I just want to give you one more example of this. We'll go on, but it's a pause to the story, but it's such an important event. I don't know how old everybody is here in this group. Everybody's a different age. If you remember where you were on 9/11, I will tell you where I was on 9/11. I was playing football at Kraft Stadium, very near the Knesset. And I remember seeing all of a sudden, we didn't have really cell phones yet, but all of a sudden these helicopters coming into the Knesset building. There's a helipad on top. And we're like, whoa, what's going on? What's going on? And then like one person had a cell phone. And they said, did you hear? Did you hear that they flew planes, terrorists flew planes into the towers? We thought that was crazy. I mean, even today, guys, girls, when you hear that, it still sounds crazy, right? And then I remember walking back to my yeshiva, and we were walking past all those little bars or those 7-Elevens that you call the makolets, right? And we saw all the Palestinians that were watching those little mini TVs as they were watching the smoke billowing up from the towers, right? And they were cheering and they were laughing and they were dancing in the streets. I remember that. I'll never forget it. And so I wasn't in America during 9/11, but I asked my grandparents who were living in Queens at the time what it was like to be Jewish or what it was like to live in New York during 9/11. So I want to share with you what they told me. It was beautiful. They said, yeah, 9/11 was terrible, but I want to share with you one beautiful piece that came out of it. They said, you know, regardless of your politics, regardless of whatever it was, we all supported the NYPD. Today, the NYPD is a very hotly debated topic. I don't know if you know what's going on in America, this, that, the other thing. That time, if you saw a policeman, you hugged him on the streets. FDNY, you said, God bless you, thank you. On every car, or on every front porch, there was an American flag. If you went up to somebody on the subway and you fell down and you needed to hug, they would hug you. Today, don't hug anybody on the subway, they'll kill you. Also COVID, but like unbelievable. Such unity in New York. How? Why? Why was there so much unity in New York? And I'm going to tell you why. Because the attacks on 9/11 were not focused towards Jewish people or non-Jewish people or Black people or white people or Russian people or Chinese people. They were focused towards New Yorkers. It was a fight. It was an attack on America. It was an attack on us, and we felt a connection. Because it was all, we lumped us together. It put us together. We depended on each other. We loved each other. And that's why, by the way, God decided to give the Torah to the Jewish people right after the Exodus of Egypt, as it said in Genesis. Why? Because the Exodus or our enslavement in Egypt was actually the first time the Jewish people really loved each other. There was no such thing as Reform or conservative or Orthodox or Hasidic Jews. It was just Yivrei. It was just Jews. And we were under Pharaoh's yoke and we stood for each other. We backed each other. We loved each other. And God said, you know what? Now that you love each other like this, now is when I'm going to give you the Torah. Now, unfortunately, Jews became, unfortunately, we separated over the years. We all made our different little niches in our faith and we called ourselves reformative, conservadox, orthodontive, or whatever crazy things we go. That's not the way it always was. And in my opinion, at least, it's not the way that it should be either. Right? So this was a monumental. Now getting back to the story. I'm sorry I went off on a little bit of a tangent. But getting back to the story, sorry, my wife just walked in, so now I just got a little. Anyway, I went back to my yeshiva that night, and I remember my rabbi, whose name was Rabbi Liff, at the time our Rosh Yeshiva, he was so nervous. It was a miracle that out of like 30 or 40 kids that were in our yeshiva at that time, it was Thursday night. And on Thursday night, everybody goes to the clubs. So everybody, thank God, came back. And I'm not going to tell you that I became religious that night because that's not true. I didn't become religious. But a switch flipped in my brain. And what the switch was, listen, I don't know if God exists or not, or I don't know if I really want to be a part of this religion or not. But, this is something in therapy school, because I'm a therapist, right? We call survivor's guilt, right? There are 30 people that are dead, and I am spared. Why? Why am I different than anybody else? Why was I lucky? Why? Just because I took a moment and I left that bar the moment that I did. Why was I lucky? What happened? Right? So it was survivor's guilt, I guess what you would call it. And I said, you know what? For the first time in my life, I am going to practice Judaism. Now, remember what I said. Sorry, 1 second. Remember what I said. I grew up practicing Judaism. But what did I do? This was the first time in my life I did it for me. Now, I understood that whether I kept kosher, mommy and daddy don't know whether I keep kosher. And mommy and daddy won't know whether I keep Shabbat or not. But whatever I do from now on, for the rest of my life, cannot be for my parents, cannot be for the rabbi, and cannot be for my culture. It can only be for me. And I must tell you, that was the first time in my life that I began to do anything remotely Jewish for myself. And that was a huge transition in my life when I began to start doing things just for me. Now,
for that?
Yeah, no, you don't have to. It's okay. It's all right. It's been a long time.
Well, I just want to clap.
Now, this feels like an AA meeting. I don't know why. Like I feel like I'm like 20 years sober or whatever it is, right?
So
but anyway,
cool. Like it's just like when I'm hearing all this, it's so cool to hear how like you went through so much, and the fact that you had to reprogram your brain to like really want Judaism is such a big deal. So like clapping for that means like like wow, like that's a
in my opinion, it's the most important thing. There's so much about what we do in life. It's just because other people tell us to do it. And it's such an unhealthy way to practice Judaism. It's such a terrible way to practice Judaism. That you have to challenge your rabbis and challenge Chaya Sarah and challenge me and say, there is no question that's off the table. I need to know if I'm going to make Judaism a part of my life. I need to know the facts. I need to know why this was great for Moses back in the Bible. But what about me, David Delman in 2020? How is this going to impact my life? Why should I do this? Why is this important? It's unfortunate that people don't want to ask the questions, but that's what it means to be a delving Jew, someone who really, really wants to know. So absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So to make a very long story short, because we're running out of time, I don't want to go longer than an hour. I think it's a sin for any lecture to go longer than an hour, in my opinion. I wouldn't want to hear me for more than an hour. Anyway, so I decided that I was going to do something for the first time, which frankly, at this point in my life, I still struggle with, if I'm honest with you, is that I was going to wake up to go to Shacharit. I was going to wake up to go to morning services. Now, this is still a challenge for me because I am not a morning person. I am a late owl. I like to go to sleep 2 or 3 in the morning and wake up later as well. But my Judaism dictates that I need to wake up earlier for a minyan. So it's hard, but it's a struggle nevertheless. So I decided, there was this one rabbi in my yeshiva. They used to wake me up every single morning and annoy me. I said, you know what? Finally, I'm going to wake up this one morning. Okay. And the next morning I woke up, I went to Shacharit and I attended this rabbi's lecture. And then there's something that he said that really, really annoyed me, bothered me, perturbed me. He said, we were talking about prayer. And he said, David, I want you to know that if you pray for something specific, not like a general prayer, but if you pray for something specific, God will give it to you. And I kind of laughed a little bit. And I said, really? I can pray for something specific and God will grant it to me? He said, yes. So I said, does that mean that if I pray for a Lamborghini in my driveway tomorrow morning, and I walk outside tomorrow morning and a Lambo is not there, does that mean that God doesn't exist? So he said, no, not necessarily. Number one, sometimes no answer is also an answer, as my mother used to say. But also that sometimes God will say, this is not good for you right now. And because I know, Delman, you're a crazy driver, so you'll drive your Lambo and kill somebody. So no, you don't get a Lambo right now, right? Not a good thing for you. But I will take your prayer and I will invest it in the bank in heaven, so to speak, and we'll try to make it to your benefit in another place. But my rabbi said, if there's something specific and God deems that it will be good for you and your growth, you will get it. So I said, can I dare you? Can I take you up on it? And he said, yes. Now, I would not give, I'm just going to tell you, if I had to redo the story again, I would not challenge God this way because it doesn't always work out. I'll be honest. It doesn't always work out maybe the way in which you'd like. Thank God in my case it did, but I'll explain to you what happened. Now, one of the things that I'm very passionate about, aside from cars and hockey, is music. I love music. I sing professionally. I play pretty much any instrument I can get a handle on. And when I was younger, right, my music of choice was heavy metal. Why? Because heavy metal often represents how a person feels inside, right? So I'm angry, so I listen to anger music. Then all of a sudden I cool down. I want to listen to some cooler music. Or as I become more spiritually enlightened, I want to listen to some more spiritual type of music. So as we change, our music genres, our music tastes also begin to change. That's why I often joke, if the me from 30 years ago would hear whatever music I'm listening to do today, the me of 30 years ago would kick my butt. Like, oh my God, Delman has totally sold out. He listens to some lame stuff. But anyway, so as I was changing, or as my anger subsided in my heart, my desire for music changed. So now my rabbi began to talk to me about a new Jewish singer who wasn't so new at the time, but a Jewish singer or a Jewish folk singer that essentially changed my life. Somebody by the name of Shlomo Khalibach. Some of you may have heard that name before. He's unfortunately no longer with us, But Shlomo Khalibach was more or less the first Jewish outreach rabbi. Back in the 60s, when your parents or my parents were at Woodstock or were in the clubs or, hanging out, whatever it is, Rabbi Khalibach would meet them in the clubs, would meet them in different places, right? And he would invite them for Shabbos and he would study with them. And he was like one of the first Chabad shluchim, actually, under the Lubavitcher Rebbe of blessed memory. But he was also, aside from his talents in Jewish outreach, he was a master when it came to Jewish song. In fact, I would be bold enough to say that pretty much every or almost every tune that you know of or sing inside the synagogue was his creation. Obviously, the words are from the ancient rabbis, of course, but as far as the tunes, a vast majority of them were authored by Shlomo Khalibach, okay? Now, Rabbi Khalibach didn't necessarily have a great voice, but it was his message that is so pure, and why I encourage you all to look him up on YouTube. He's got hundreds and hundreds of stories and songs that will appeal to your deepest of hearts. And his message of a Jew is a Jew, no matter how religious or secular you are, we're all one family, we should all love each other. And that is the true Torah way that a person should ideally be. And I began to really feel connected to Rabbi Khalibach and his teachings, okay? I unfortunately never had the chance to meet him. He had passed away earlier. But his teachings and his lectures are something that really, really inspired me. And I encourage you after this phone call to go on YouTube and look him up, okay? And at that time, this was just before Passover. And the tradition for most Americans in Israel at the time is that they will go to Israel for kind of like the first semester, and then they will go back to America to spend Passover with their families, and then deciding if they want to actually go back to Israel to finish off their year of study in Israel. So I had to make a decision, right? And I said, okay, well, I want to test God, so to speak, and I want to find out, whether this prayer thing is real. So I decided what I was going to do. There was a book that had just come out. Again, this was just before Passover. And the book was the Haggadah, which is the story of the Exodus of Egypt that we read on Passover night. And the Khalibach Family Foundation had just come out with basically the Haggadah, but with vignettes of Rabbi Khalibach's life kind of weaved into the story. And I also highly recommend it. It's great. And it was very, very expensive. It's like $60, $70. And I did not have that kind of money at the time. So I decided that this is what I was going to do. I was going to pray to God for this book. Now, if I'll be honest with you, the truth is, right, it really wasn't about the book. I wanted to be a believer. I was incredibly hurt, but I wanted to love God. I wanted to. I was a broken person inside, but I wanted to in my heart. So I said, somebody had told me, and again, I haven't ever seen this brought down anywhere, but somebody told me that if a person prays at the Western Wall 40 days in a row, right, and prays for a specific thing, God will grant you that thing. Now, again, if you ask me for a proof to this, I don't have one. But remember, coming from a guy who can't wake up in the morning, who still can't wake up in the morning, right? This was a huge thing for 40 days. A guy who hates religion is going to pray at the Western Wall. And I did. For 40 days straight, I walked from my yeshiva, from Ner Yaakov, all the way to the Western Wall in the Old City, and I prayed for my book. And again, it really wasn't about the book. The book was the tool, so to speak. But what I wanted to know was whether God actually cared about what I had to say. Okay? Now, I left Israel for Passover a very unhappy person because God hath performed no miracles on my behalf. And I left, and this was after the bombing. And I said, you know what? Judaism is not for me. I'm done with this. This was after, bombs make him religious. No, this was after the bombing. And I said, this is not for me. Clearly, if God does exist, he does not care about what I have to say. And I left Israel a very, very broken person. So I'm sitting at the Passover table with my brother, my sister, my father, my mother, and my grandmother. Okay. And we know that on Passover night, we talk about the four sons, right? The wise son, the wicked son, the simple son, the one does not ask. I feel like the wicked son. I got my Haggadah upside down. What am I even doing this anymore? I don't even believe in this anymore. There's a bunch of stupidity and malarkey. I can't even handle this anymore. I'm done. I'm so sick of this. I'm so tired of this. And my father lifts up the cup to say Kiddush, to start the prayer of Kiddush. And just as about the first words come out of his mouth, I get a tap on my shoulder. And my older brother, Brian, says to me, hey, David, I know that you mentioned you like this guy, Khalibach. I went to Eichler's the other day and I bought you a special gift. And 1 minute, or 1 second, I should say, before my father said Kiddush on Passover night, I was given the Khalibach Haggadah. I immediately broke down in tears at the table. My parents are looking at me like I'm nuts, right? They're like, what's going on? And I had to explain to them the whole story, that I prayed for something specific. I didn't pray for peace in the Middle East. I didn't pray for a cure to AIDS or coronavirus. Coronavirus wasn't a thing yet. I prayed for a specific book. And God gave it to me on the night of Passover. So that's the day I'd like to say that I became a ma'amin. In Hebrew means where I became a believer. And I decided to go back to Israel. I married my girlfriend as fast as I possibly could. My girlfriend is now my wife of 18 years. She's my inspiration. She's my everything. She got me out of a very dark place, continues to inspire me on every single thing that I do, encourages me in my social work practice, in all the teachings that I give, right? She never, ever gave up on me, even on very, very, very difficult times. She saw what she claims to be the diamond in the rough, right? And we've devoted our life to Jewish outreach ever since. We got married. We lived in Ramat Beit Shemesh for 6 years. I started a program for drug and alcohol addicted teens in Ramat Beit Shemesh. They used to come to my house every single Friday night. Fast forward 3 years, I met a great rabbi by the name of Rabbi Ben Sion Klatzko, who met me in Ramat Beit Shemesh. And he said, hey, Delman, you look like you're really good at this Jewish outreach stuff. Why don't you come with me to Texas? So I got my first job as a rabbi at university at UT, University of Texas in Austin, Texas. And thus began my wife and I our career to save the Jewish people, to defend the Jewish people, first in Israel, then in Texas, then in Stony Brook, New York, and Long Island, and now here in Queens, New York, right?
Wow.
So I guess just to sum it all up real quick, whatever you do in life, gentlemen, ladies, this journey, and I'm still on this journey myself. It's a journey. And I may be a little bit farther. It doesn't matter because I wear a kippah and maybe you don't, or it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. We're all on this journey together. But the most important thing that you should not forget from this lecture is whatever you do from this day forth, do it for you. Do it for you. I don't get a kickback, Chai Sarah. I don't believe gets a kickback if you decide to spend more time to study in Israel or decide this is a relationship between you and your creator. And the more that you invest in it, the more that you challenge those around you, that, find that rabbi, find that mentor, you challenge them, and you don't stop until you demand the answers that as a Jewish person you have a right to. That's how you will find success in life and in Judaism. And that's how I found it. And my path to Judaism is very unique, and it's not the same as every single person's on this phone call. And you have to, mine might be a bit of an interesting story, but I would bet that every single one of you on this call has an interesting story also. But as my Rabbi, Rav Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg of blessed memory used to say, it all depends on the type of prescription glasses you have. So why did Rabbi say that? What did that mean? Because a person can look at the miracles in their life and have the wrong prescription and just say, yeah, I got lucky. Yeah, I got out of that club just in time. Luck. Yeah, I got that book just as I was praying for it. All luck. And a lot of people live that way, gentlemen. A lot of people live that way. They say, I got that spot. I was praying for that spot to be opened up in front of the school so I could park real quick. And then all of a sudden the guy pulls out just as you're pulling in. You say, it was luck. And if people go their whole life because they have the wrong prescription glasses. A person needs to look with the right prescription and say, I see God's presence in everything I do. And when you look with the right prescription, you will find yourself in a completely different place and a much greater place of gratitude. And I guess just thank you all for listening. I hope I didn't bore you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so excited, just to hear all these things.
Thank you.
I actually.
Thank you.
Wait. 1 second. We're not going, Delman. Everyone just wait 1 second. I actually didn't know that story with Pray for the book. That is adorable.
Which one didn't you hear? I didn't hear. Which one didn't you hear?
The Pray for the book.
Oh, the book. Yeah.
So cute.
It's the Haggadah I still use today.
Wow. Maybe you'll show it to us. I love the way you answer the question that Hashem is not going to give you something unless it's good for you. But if it's good for you and it's good for you, if I pray for you, could actually make it happen. I love that. It's like a twist. And all the times you always say pray for something, But you're saying, if it's good for you and Hashem thinks it's good for you and you really want it, he'll give it to you. But like if it's not good for you, then you won't get it. So I love that twist.
Right.
So,
I say like this: God is not a genie. We often look at the prayer book like Aladdin looks at the lamp. We'll rub the sitter, and then Robin Williams will pop out and grant our wishes. God is not a wish granter. God is your parent, right? So sometimes our parents give us what we want, and if they're good parents, sometimes they won't give us what we want. You say, well, that's not fair. I want to have sweets all the way till dinner time. The answer is parents say no sometimes because I know better, right? So when we look at God as less of a wish granter and less of a genie and more of a parent, then you see it works a little different.
Wow. Well, I really, really, really like that. So I just want to give everyone a minute if they want to ask a question. Is that okay?
Free to answer any questions.
Yeah, if anybody wants to ask a question or wants to comment, I want to hear what you have to say because
comment or a question.
Rabbi Delman has a lot to share with us.
Okay, so Rami's got a question.
Rami, what do you want to say?
Okay, wait. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you.
Thank you for listening.
And I want to say that it's amazing the way you speak about your wife.
Yeah, she's awesome. If I'm cool, she's 100 times cooler. Look what she let us do to my bedroom. To put up all this hockey stuff. But she was she's always seen that's I'll say the beauty of I see there's a lot of girls here and Baruch Hashem, it's a good thing. Why? Because I think the Jewish people depends on women. My rabbi used to say, if the man is the head of the relationship, the woman is the neck that turns the head in the direction that it should. So as the future mothers of the Jewish people, Hashem gives a great power to women to be able to inspire the men to do what needs to be done. And I would definitely not be religious today without her. And I would say I would certainly not be alive physically today without her either. And I'll tell you one other thing, by the way, it's also very important that I did not mention, but I'm happy that Romy brought this up. Never let your past define your future. Okay, now I'm going to tell you something a little personal. I did not want to be a rabbi, even after I became religious. And Rabbi Scheinberg convinced me to be a rabbi. And I said, why didn't I want to? So Rabbi Scheinberg said, why don't you want to be a rabbi? And I said, because I found it hypocritical for me to tell other people how to live their lives when I myself did not live the life of a religious person. So Rabbi Scheinberg Zatzal said that I was making a big mistake, right? That a person has something called Yom Kippur, that when a person asks for forgiveness for something, it's done, it's over, it's finished. And the only thing that's holding you back from your future of what you can accomplish is your Yetzer Hara, is the evil inclination that tells you to do the things you shouldn't be doing. It doesn't matter. I don't want to hear, oh, but my parents aren't religious. Oh, but I did this and that. Oh, but I did this. You have Chayei Sarah. You have me now. You have all these great opportunities. You're in Israel, rabbis, yeshivas. Ignorance is definitely not bliss. You have an opportunity to find this in your own way. Bezrat Hashem. Anybody else?
I just wanted to say thank you, and it was really, really nice. And there were a lot of things here that I really related to, because my parents are also Baalei Teshuvah, and we're kind of somewhere far. We're also from the Shoah, kind of like a couple of generations ago. So thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to show you some. So if you'll I want to show you some. Actually, I didn't plan on showing this to you, but it's actually right next to me. So I'll just tell you a very, very quick story. When I was just telling you this, this is actually a long story, but I'm going to make it very short. So with my organization Rage now, we take Jewish students, and I hope, please God, for those of you that are in New York, perhaps you can get on my trip. We go to Eastern Europe. Now, I've been twice to Poland already. I've been to all the concentration camps. And for me, this trip was like an unbelievable thing because it gave me so much peace in my heart. Because when I'm just being very honest here, right? When I saw all the horrible things, again, you could hear stories and watch Schindler's List and see all the movies and read all the books. But when you are standing in a gas chamber in Auschwitz and you are staring at the walls, it brings so much understanding to what our grandparents went through. So when I look back in my own childhood and realized how dysfunctional my family was, I said to myself, now I get it. Now I understand why. Right? Look where they came from. Look what they had to endure. I've heard stories and stories, but it didn't mean anything until I saw it. The Torah says, "Eino doma shmiya k're'iyah." You don't believe it until you see it. So to make a very long story short, I was on my first trip to Poland, and I had very limited knowledge of my family, of what happened to them. It was an 80-year mystery We knew that they were murdered. My Zadia was actually sent to Auschwitz earlier on to help build the camp, but the rest of my family disappeared, and we didn't know what happened to them. All I knew is they came from a shtetl in Poland called Belchatov, and they were Hasidic Jews. Now, I'm not Hasidic anymore, or at least that kind of died out in the war. But on my first trip, we went to a death camp called Chelmno, which is a very notorious camp, which was the first camp to employ the use of poison gas to murder Jews. And what was done was Jews were locked in the back of furniture trucks, and the exhaust was fed into the back of the furniture truck. The truck was driven 18 minutes into the forests of Chelmno, which is what the Nazi scientists said is how long it takes to asphyxiate a person. And there the bodies were unloaded from the furniture truck, burned and buried. And we went to this field, right? And the tour guide says, okay, there are 300,000 men, women, and children that were brought here, asphyxiated in the trucks and buried in this field. Now, when you hear the number 50,000, that number, it's just too much for you to comprehend. That's like Madison Square Garden, the Barclays Center, MetLife Stadium, and maybe 2 or 3 others all together when we talk about what 300,000 people is. So this was my group of Stony Brook University students, all secular students, and I'm the one with the video camera. And actually, this story is on video as it took place in the camp. So I encourage you to look this up afterwards. I was kind of videoing my students bending down and picking up these stones all across the field. Why? Because these stones were not stones. They were actually bones, human remains that even 80 years after the Holocaust, there are millions and millions and millions of bone shards, tiny little rocks about this big, that are white on top and black on bottom. That because it rains in Poland so much, that whatever is buried comes to the ground, to the top. And according to Jewish tradition, the biggest bizayon, or the greatest embarrassment that could be to a human being, is that their bones are laid unburied. So we, as Stony Brook, can you imagine 50 secular college students from Stony Brook University got on hands and knees and picked up fistfuls of human remains, and we brought them to the corner of the field. And there's like a little a tarp, and you put them in there. And the head rabbi, who already his parents were passed away, said Kaddish. I can't because my parents are still living. The parents said Kaddish, and we had a eulogy, an actual funeral. Okay. Now I'm videotaping these college students picking up these rocks or these bones, and I noticed that there is a matzeva. There is a stone that was erected by survivors of the war who came back, and I'm videotaping because whatever, I want to get some footage. I'm videotaping, and I look at this stone, and it says in English and Hebrew and in Yiddish, "From the town of Belchatov," from the town of Belchatov. These are the Jews that were brought from Belchatov to Chelmno, gassed in the furniture trucks, and buried here. And I'm looking down a list of names, 3,000 Jews from Belchatov that were brought to Chelmno, and I'm looking down the list, and I go Aleph, Beis, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Ches, Tes, Yud, Kaf, Chaf, Lamed, and there I see the name of my great-grandmother, my great-grandfather, and all 4 of their children that were brought there completely by accident, although we do not believe in accidents in Judaism. That there were 6 million Jews that died in the Holocaust, and Rabbi Delman found one. It's not supposed to happen. That doesn't happen, not unless you believe in God. I had 2 kids on the trip that were atheists. Both of them went to yeshiva afterwards because they said it's impossible. These things should not happen. You should not be able to go back to Poland after 80 years and solve a mystery to find your entire family. It shouldn't happen. So I fell down on my knees. I started crying like crazy. All of my students came around me. I tried to explain to them what just happened. And I made a shvuah. In Hebrew means a swear, because really you're not supposed to swear in Judaism because it's like a very serious thing. But there are times in a person's life when something is so touching, when you feel God's hand on your shoulder so purely that you want to be makadesh, you want to sanctify that moment. So 3 times I made a swear: when I survived that terrorist attack, when I married my wife, and in the field in Chelmno. And I swore to God on that day that I would raise my children in a certain way, that they should be Sabbath observant, so that those that were killed here, that their lives would be cherished. And actually, that's why, although I am not Hasidic, I took on one Hasidic tradition since that time. I now wear a gartel. That means a gartel is kind of like this little rope, kind of black thing, to cherish their memory. that whenever I wear it, when I pray, I think of my great-grandparents that I discovered in a field in Chelmno, and I hope I make them proud every single day. And I actually got these pictures developed. These are the only pictures that they ever existed, okay? Because they weren't big on pictures back in Poland. This is my great-grandfather, Shmuel Zonvil, who unfortunately was murdered. This is my great-grandmother, Golda, who unfortunately was also murdered. This was the baby, which unfortunately was also murdered. And all the other children here in this picture. And this one here is my Zaidi. This is my grandfather, the only survivor of the entire family. And he survived Auschwitz and death marches and such. And he met my grandmother in a DP camp, in a displaced persons camp. So this is the family. And I encourage you to do your own research for yourself, for your own family. If you want to look this up, you can actually see the video of me in Chelmno crying on the floor, because once I collapsed, one of the students grabbed my camera and continued to videotape as it was happening. So if you look up the words Emet, Poland, E-M-E-T, Poland, you will see this actually happening real time. And maybe you could leave a nice comment. That would be nice too.
Is it on YouTube?
It's on YouTube. Yeah, type in Emet, E-M-E-T, which was the organization I worked for at that time, and Poland, P-O-L-A-N-D.
Wow. This is incredible. That is so mind-blowing.
Okay, I feel bad, Chaisara. I went over time 8 minutes. So if anybody has any other questions, probably we'll wrap up.
Yeah. But if anyone wants to go, they can go. But I'm saying this is a moment that they don't get in real life. So this is very special. So whoever wants to go can go. Whatever needs a few more minutes, is it okay if they get a few minutes so they can just?
I mean, I'm done. I'm done with my spiel. So if anybody has any other questions, they're welcome to ask.
Sure. Perry, you want to ask something? You want to say something, Perry?
I was just wondering, do you see any benefits in like your day-to-day life, like being religious? And if you see any, like what are they?
Great question. So first of all, I love your accent. Where are you from?
London.
Oh, smashing. Wonderful. Okay, lovely. Okay, Americans love English people, British people, that we all think you're like super intelligent. You just sound very smart. Okay,
no.
Anyway, so people ask me this question all the time, Perry. They say to me, Rabbi, did you have more fun when you were secular or more fun when you were religious? And I laugh and I say, of course I had more fun when I was secular. What kind of question is that? You know, parties all the time, drinking and other things, frankly, that I don't want to share with you, right? You know, always, of course it's more fun. But who says that not about our job, but who says that's what we really want? You know, it's very interesting. There's no word in Hebrew for fun. Did you know that? There is an Arabic word for fun. It's called kef. Kef. It is a kef. How fun. Kef is not a Hebrew word. It's an Arabic word. Did you know that?
No.
We have lots of words for pleasure and enjoyment, but no word for fun. Why? Because fun is like, it's a meaning of like just for nothing, you know, just to have pleasure for no reason. I will say that I had a much more fun life when I was secular, but to be honest, I have a much more meaningful life that I'm religious. And if you ask me, would I trade my fun for meaning? Any day of the week, Perry. And I'll tell you why, right? Think about this. Ask your average guy, would it be more fun to be with another girl every day? Go to the clubs, drink, smoke, chill, do whatever you want. A lot of people do that, but yet millions of men and millions of women every year get married. And they choose to live a monogamous life, to raise a family. Forget about religion. They want to hone them. They want to find meaning in their life. However we define meaning, it could be religion, it could be other things, but they choose a life of meaning. Why would they choose that? They choose it because you know why? Fun gets boring after a while. After you press the fun button 7,000 times, your brain just says, okay, now what? What's gonna last with me until I die? What are my children gonna say about me after I'm gone? What kind of mother am I gonna be? What kind of this and that? Then the meaning starts. That's why when we're kids, we don't really think about that. We don't think about that. We think about, we're kids. So we think about getting wasted. We think about enjoying ourselves, which are all wonderful and I guess normal for a young guy or girl, teenager, normal. But then as we grow, there's a switch that happens at a certain point and says, okay, now I'm looking for a little bit more meaning in my life, a reason maybe why bad things happen to good people. I'm trying to find a little depth in my life. I'm trying to find a little spirituality in my life. People tend to become more spiritual as they get older, as they see the sun beginning to set in their life. So I'll tell you, my grandma actually has a very hard time now because of COVID. I haven't been able to see my grandmother in 10 months. Okay, she's 99 years old. Right, it's very, very hard. Unfortunately, one of my daughters just tested positive, so I'm home. I'm in quarantine myself. I'm feeling fine, Baruch Hashem. But my grandmother is actually not the oldest person in my family. My uncle Nat, my grandmother's brother, is 101 years old. He just turned 101 a few months ago, right? And his wife had passed away about 8 or 10 months ago. Again, she was 99. So obviously, as when anybody passes away, it's sad. But when you're 99, it's a celebration of life. A person was living for a long time, and at the funeral, my secular Uncle Nat pulled me over to his wheelchair, and he said, because he considers me like the rabbi in the family, which is crazy that I'm a rabbi, absolutely nuts, right? And he said to me, David, I wish I was more religious. And I cried when he said that. You know why? How many Shabbats do you think that takes care of? You think a person can't do tshuva when he's 101 years old at a funeral? You think God doesn't understand when a person has regret in their heart based on the opportunities that a person had? My parents came from the Soviet Union. Judaism was a crime. How can I be held accountable, right? So every single person needs to do what they can do at their ability. So if maybe keeping a whole Shabbat or kosher is too much for you at this time, understandable. How can we be a slightly better Jew tomorrow than we were today? Small things, itty bitty things. Be a growing Jew. Don't be an Orthodox conservative or Reform Jew. Be a growing Jew. Every day a little bit more. Every day a little bit more. And I definitely strive to answer your question for a life of meaning over fun. I have 7 kids now. I have 4 girls and 3 boys, which is pretty amazing. I did not plan on having such a big family. My wife wanted a big family, and guess what happened? We had a big family, but I have a very, very beautiful family. And I have more pleasure in my life now than I've ever had in my entire life. That's with all the crazy stuff. I can promise you, again, I don't want to reveal too much, especially because I'm being recorded, but whatever you can think of, I did at least once, maybe twice, sometimes 3 times, right? But I will tell you, it's all empty. There's at the end of the road. Once you've done it all, once you've tried it all, once you've experimented it all, it's just an empty road. And then when you're there and you're done and you wonder and you're looking up and you're saying, what next? You're looking for something greater. You're looking for something deeper. And for me, that was my faith that found it. But every single person on their own and without pressure. That's very important. Every person on their own and without the pressure of somebody pushing them to do something that they're not ready to do yet. Okay?
Whoa,
anybody else?
Harry, I love your question. Thank you for asking. That was great.
Hi, Sarah. I look forward, if any of these girls or guys want to hear me again, I'm more than happy to come back, let's say in another week or so, and we can talk about, I have hundreds of classes that I give.
Yeah.
If the group would like to have me back, you just schedule it and I'll be happy to oblige.
Sure. Anna, would you like to say something? You and your husband over there, I want to hear from you.
Yes, I just want to thank you, Rabbi, for being so transparent and being true to who you really are.
Yeah.
You're a great inspirational story. It's just, yeah, I mean, it's just for being so transparent, because sometimes we think that our rabbis are perfect.
No, not be a long shot. The best rabbis and therapists are the ones that are the most screwed up. That's the truth of it.
Thank you so
much. You guys
much.
are awesome. Wishing you a lot of success on your journey. I'm sure you guys have an amazing story to tell one day. I hope to hear it one day.
Yes.
Best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Do you want to share anything with him that you gained from what he said? Because sometimes when
you don't have to put them on the spot if they're not. If that's okay.
No, because I know what Anna's like. I know that she's a very big sharer. She likes to share. So I just want to give her a chance to feel like she could say something.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you put her on the spot now.
Oh, yeah.
No. But I do hear the rabbi's story. It's like God just yearns for Hashem, yearns for us to trust in Him, and this walk that we're walking, this deeper meaning of who Hashem is, the love that He has for us. It's incredible. I mean, it's just if it fills that gap that everyone's searching, but it seems like it puts the pieces of the puzzle in your life. From what we're for myself,
there's meaning to it.
Definitely, there's a deeper meaning. It's hard. Exactly.
What I want to tell you, and this is why frankly, prospective converts are so special and so unique, and why they should be cherished unbelievably, is because as somebody born Jewish, we take it for granted. We take it for granted. We were born into the club. So we feel like, should we go to shul today? Should we not? All right, maybe I'll go. Maybe I won't. Should I keep kosher today? Should I not? So we take it for granted every day. And you know, when we see, when a person who was born Jewish kind of sees converts coming in, so we either look at it with incredible awe, as we should, or sometimes with incredible jealousy, because we wonder, if we were in your position, would we opt out and go to Mickey D's? And I ask that question on myself all the time. Like, if one day I had like we call it the purge, right? If one day God just said, for the next 24 hours, all trade is legal, right? Like, oh wow, like, where am I going to go first? Burger King, Mickey D's, like, where do we go? Yeah, let's do it, right? I wonder how many Jews would opt out, and I dare say probably quite a few. So when we see people that are opting in out of choice, you guys, like, you're the bee's knees, man. Like, that's awesome. You guys rock. And you're a great inspiration to all Jews. And I hope that, God willing, you should be successful, that you have a job to do. Your job to do is that you need to come onto our college campuses and share your story, so that you can make all those other Jewish young teenagers feel appreciative for what they had growing up. You understand? That's your mission.
Yes. It's ironic because our daughter-in-law, she's Jewish. And so when we do like the Hanukkah, she's like, that's my religion. Leave my religion alone. And so I think we are instilling a little bit of jealousy.
There you
and
go. That's right.
kind of, and she's a secular Jew. And so we tell her, why are you neglecting?
Yes.
This is a you're chosen. You know, I mean, I know that's so broad to say it like that, but just the fact that she's Jewish, it's like, why would you give up your heritage? Why would you give up the history? Be proud of it. And then, like you said, she was brought up by force, and so she's at the point where she's like, I want nothing to do with it. Her mother was brought up the same way with force, so she put it upon her daughter, and so. But I think we might be part of the little jealousy spark.
Okay.
Hopefully she'll go back to
it'll stir that.
Well, Annie, you have to see it this way, which is, we all remember what I said. Whatever is true about religion is true about relationships, right? Here's a fact: we all take advantage of the people we love. Why? Because they're in our family. They're our parents. They're our sisters. They're our brothers. They're our spouses, and we take advantage of them because we think they'll never leave us. It's my mom. It's my dad. So I can say that I let my hair down, say what I want to say, because it's my family, right? So that's because you're in the family, right? So when you're in the family, you feel like you have the right to pull punches. But when you're not in the family and you're trying to get into the, right, when you're the prospective son-in-law or the daughter-in-law, right, you're minding all your P's and Q's. Yes, Mrs. So-and-so. Yes, Mr. So-and-so. You're doing everything you can to be welcomed into the family. So that's the same thing here. Your daughter-in-law is in the family. So she, by definition, takes advantage of it, because we all do, because it's family. That's what we all do. It's family, and we shouldn't do it, but it's human nature that we do. So you are going to be a great source of inspiration, not only to your family, please God, but to all the Jewish people. So I hope that one day you'll feel bold enough to, so for example, and I want to give other people a chance to talk, but just this one last thing. So I told you I helped 5 people become Jewish, right? So one of the 5 people I helped become Jewish was a young lady that I met at Stony Brook University, who happens to be, are you ready for this? The great granddaughter of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Who is now an Orthodox Jewish woman living in Lakewood. Her husband learns in Kollel.
Wow.
3 beautiful Jewish children. Who would have thought that the great-great-granddaughter of one of the greatest advocates for African-American and Jewish defense is now an Orthodox Jewish woman living in Lakewood?
Wow.
So
Amazing.
she converted. She also married someone who converted, and they live a very happy, beautiful life in Lakewood, New Jersey, right?
Wow.
So pretty unbelievable, right?
Yes.
Whoa, that is so cool. And isn't this cool the way I met them? They were at the Kota last year, just walking around, trying to just see what's going on. And then me and Rabbi Abraham went over to them and we're like, where are you guys from? And they're like, we love Jewish people, even though we're not Jewish, we think they're so cool. We just want to learn more about you. And then this year I started speaking to Anna. She's like, no. She's like, I want to become a Jew. And I'm like, are you serious? She's like, absolutely. I said, but you know that, like, you're going to be pushed away. She's like, I know about that. Nobody could push me away. I want it no matter what. She's like, I don't care how much I get pushed away. I'm in no matter how much I get
Okay.
pushed away.
Hi, Sarah, I apologize. Because I have another lesson I have to teach in just a few minutes. So I want to just say how honored and privileged I am to have spoken to all of you. Thank you so much for listening. I want to tell you that now you all have your personal rabbi, if you didn't have already, that I am there to answer any questions. So Chai Sarah has my phone number.
Yeah.
If you're in New York, then like I'm local, which is even better. Any questions, Rabbi's here for you. Anytime you want to study or anything, please just get my number from Chai Sarah. And I look forward to hopefully learning with you again soon.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. We so appreciate it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I will try to do another night with more things. When you see you get an audience, you're like, yay. But Khani, I just want to say hi to you for a sec. Is there a Khani here? Alana, can I just say hi to you, Alana? Everyone's leaving. 1 minute.
Oh, oops.
So we'll say, Anna and Victor, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you for the invite.
Thank you so much.
I'm
It was
glad
very
you
fast.
over the other one.
Okay. All righty. You take care.
Yeah,
See you,
Anna, I'm
everyone.
gonna call you soon to figure everything else out. Can I say hi? Who is that? Hello. What's her name?
Annabelle.
Hi, Annabelle.
Abigail.
Hi, Abigail.
They were babysitting.
You're babysitting.
No, Grandpa's babysitting.
Yeah.
Are these your grandchildren? Are these your grandchildren?
Yeah, this is from my our daughter Brittany.
Guess what?
Yes,
And guess
she
what?
yes.
Our Hanukkah's already over.
Oh, Hanukkah's already over?
2 days of Christmas.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, you have very, very cool grandparents. You know that? You appreciate them?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Say we love your singing, right?
Did you see our room?
Show me your room. Let me see your room. Let me see.